begin the year with doing a lot of work around like what it is to be a community and developing kind of our own guidelines for how we're going to work together. But the negotiated curriculum process is really, I think, empowers the kids the most. They start with the questions and concerns they have about themselves and the world, and then from there we develop this year-long theme. And within that, they get to choose their pathway. So they basically can decide what they're going to research, study, learn about, do, make, whatever it is. So I think that really sets the stage for empowering them to use their voices in a positive way. And it's not necessarily like, yes, our school, we use developmental design, and we start every morning in our advisories with a circle of power and respect. But those are, I think they just all go together with the process of the projects. But then they're willing to ask questions and advocate for themselves and guide their project work and do things that I think a lot of times they surprise themselves with what they do. They can't necessarily envision what the end of a project looks like, or they might have a vision, and it might change along the way, but I think they feel really good at the end, and they are really surprised at the outcomes. And when they look back and reflect on the skills of what they've gotten through the project, not necessarily just the product of what came out of it, I think they recognize that, they learned a lot of important life skills.
Yeah, and in the beginning we really challenged them to articulate why the project is important and how it's connected to the overall theme and how what they see is going to be the end result. So I think that discussion back and forth is really how it kind of gets going too.
Well, we have a pretty structured process that, even though project sometimes looks like creative chaos, it's each week we give them a weekly goal, which gives them the focus for the week. So, they start with coming up with some initial research about this idea they might have, just to kind of get a sense of what is it that I'm going to be really interested in. Then from there they develop some big driving questions and sub-questions to drive their research. And then they develop a community partnership, and they do interviews, or they meet with their partner, and they do more research, and they start designing or building, whatever it is. But each week it's very clear what our whole team weekly goal is, so that there's accountability in that we see that they are moving forward with their project. But they might be, building a robot, and they're working on that, but at the same time they're also developing a partnership with a community member, and everyone on the team is doing that. So we can help facilitate that process, and it's very much kind of, there's scaffolding to it, because I think if we just said go ahead, it would be, they wouldn't know how to do it.
Which we used to do, actually. We used to not do it. We used to have a different structure than what we have now.
Yeah.
And having the weekly goal, and then every week when we have our gathering meetings, we add a new goal. All the goals are right there on the page. So every single goal they've had for the entire year is listed right there. And then all of those goals have something on their PLP, so we can easily see if it's been done or not. And so it's easy to say, oh, it looks like you need to work on this community partner reflection. So everything is just right there.
Yeah.
All the assignments, and then all the outcomes are on our PLPs.
Mm-hmm. They also, on their PLPs, they have a weekly reflection that many of them either make a YouTube channel to reflect, or they do a Google presentation or some Prezi, so they can choose the format of how they're going to present their weekly reflection, but it's the same 3 questions every week, what did you accomplish this week? What are your goals for what do you want to work on next week, and what support do you need from an adult, so that way you can be aware of what they need. So there's that accountability piece too every week. But yeah, we've definitely broken it down, because we've learned over 6 years how to really get to a good end result, and what specific tasks need to happen along the way.
We didn't have a lot of questions about projects this year.
No, and it was interesting because we had a whole new group, every year we have a whole new group of 7th graders that have never experienced a project. So I think in the beginning their parents are maybe a little anxious about them, but I think the level of involvement really varies. Like some parents, for instance, like our Trebuchet group, they were really hands-on involved because it involved actually, like, they were a partner, you know, and they went to their lumber yard and worked with them on building and welding and all sorts of things. So that's a really closely tied, you know, relationship. But then there's some parents that just kind of hear about it from, you know, at their conferences, like along the way, you know, at their PLP conferences throughout the year, they're hearing about it, or they're helping them, you know, get materials or connect with this person. But some parents maybe didn't even know much until they came last night to the project fair and just kind of trusted that there was something that was making their child excited about coming to school every day.
Parents have a wide range of how they get engaged in the schools.
Yeah. I was also thinking with parent engagement, like we always let them know, like give them a heads up, like I'm taking your child to see so-and-so in Burlington, you know, Tuesday. And so they have the heads up. I mean, they always know that we're like going out, but they never question that piece either. I think that's exciting for them, like that their kids are getting to meet with experts in the field and have some real world experiences. So no one has ever, you know, I think it's always been, like this year it's just been really positive. I think, and the parents were really impressed last night.
Yeah, they were.
I think because, you know, they're wondering what is an end result going to look like. Yeah.
They were surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard more than ever this year, kids say, this is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to study this. How can I, what do I have to do to have this for a job? I've heard that numerous times from all different kids about various things. One kid just said, when I grow up, I want to be able to do some backyard sugaring at my house. He also decided he wanted to become a doctor. So I just think giving them the experiences of seeing, you know, what you could do, you know, is beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, like career opportunities in the future, like giving them the opportunity to imagine what their future might be, but then also just all the skills that are in such important life skills, like communication skills. A lot of them this morning when they were reflecting on last night's success, they said, you know, I didn't even need to use my PLP to refer to, I just talked. And we're like, that's even better. If you can talk about what you learned without having to reference anything and like you can be articulate, well that's incredible because many adults can't do that. And you know, so being able to connect with adults, I mean, I think our relationship with them is unique too. I think it's a different type of, you know, student-teacher relationship because of the way that we work our project block and kind of work our team.
I mean, we don't have all the answers, so we're basically just working with them to try to help them be successful, but we don't know everything, so.
Yeah, and there's times where they get frustrated with us or themselves because like it might not be what they envision, but we like then, you know, we work through it and you know, problem solve together. There's a lot of that. But like, so the communication skills, I think advocating for like themselves and feeling empowered that they can do things, like I feel like they get really a sense of pride when they see their projects. We have 4 rubrics. One is on conducting research and then group task and group work, and then one is on preparing for a presentation, one's giving a presentation. We actually had them 2 weeks ago give their presentations to the whole team.
And that's how we really motivated them.
Yes.
Because we scored them and we met with them individually to go over where they were at that moment. And then we had another 2 weeks to they could really focus in on some areas to you know, really present what they actually did, and you know. So that helped. Yeah. So they got a lot of feedback from their peers. The peers gave them a lot of feedback, like, this is what's looking good right now, you need more here, you know, or why don't you try this? And one of the main challenges was getting all the information in there, because they did so much stuff, they had forgotten all the stuff that they had done, so it gave us a chance to say, well, remember when you did this and this and this and this, but you need, show some evidence for that. And that worked out really well.
But yeah, what this is really showing is that kids can dive really deeply into a passion, and it might like go this way and that way, but it's still around like their main idea, and that we can actually slow down in the feedback that we give them and be really, thoughtful about how they approach their work, and we can have more time with them individually too.
Yeah.
It just gave us so much more time to do things. I felt that was a better
Yeah.
model, and of course our model is always evolving.
Yeah.
We kind of created this model. Well, we did. It was
never happened
our
twice the same.
no, it's never happened the same. And I think like it keeps getting better and better. At the end of our projects, we have them make a map of their curriculum connections, because in the beginning I think it's really hard, and it's not really clear. And so at the end they take a map, and you'll see it, and kids will talk about it. Then they look at how it connects to the different subject areas and sustainability, technology integration piece, and community, like how they've impacted the community. And so they can map it out, and as they're going through it, they're like, oh, yeah, wow, there was a lot of math in this project.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I was doing all this math, or there was a lot of writing and communication, and, I think of like the playwright group, like the number, like writing a play, and, then like all the drafts and the edits, and then helping people, and, then making sure that it flows, and adapting, and then they talked about that last night too, all the changes they had to make based on who they had,
and the songwriters, like, they're writing all their lyrics, that's like a
poetry,
all their the amazing writing they did all year just there was
incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And their lyrics are so powerful too. It's not just simple.
This is a time where they're like so, hoping to find like who they are, like who they are, what they're all about, what the world is going to hold for them. They feel really lost at times. They feel, disconnected, and it's a time where you have to engage them. It's a huge make or break time. So I feel like so many kids have told us that they, actually when we did like kind of like an 8th grade closing circle the other day, and a lot of them talked about like feeling really good about their place and their friendships and their peers and who they are as an individual and the work they've done, and feeling confident as they move on. I don't think like we, too often their kids are spoon-fed like information and given things to do, and it could be challenging, but this is such a different kind of challenge. I think they also learn to advocate for themselves. I feel like they, like, often this age group, they're so like inside themselves that, this really pushed them to like come out of themselves and like talk to adults and meet with people and, have adult conversations and problem solve and work through a lot of different types of problems, because these projects are not like, they're not cut and paste, there's a lot of problems that come up with each project, and we're pulled in a million directions, and we can't always give them 100% of our time and energy, so they have to do a lot of problem solving on their own or seek out people that can help them. Basically, you like have to go for it is basically what I don't know how to say it in a more articulate way. Like, if this is what I believed like ever since I became a teacher, this way of teaching and working with kids. And so like, and I think a lot of teachers really believe that in their heart, but if you don't like just go for it and like let go a little bit and maybe take some risks, there's a lot of risks, and it might look messy, and you might feel like things they're out of your control, even though they're not out of your control. It's just like, you just have to like remember that you were working with 20 or 40 other individuals, and that everyone needs to have a part. Like, it really does need to be like a democratic process, and so all the things we know about best practice and teaching and middle level philosophy, like if you just kind of go for it, and and not pull back when it feels like scary or intense or messy or like a failure, because I'm sure we failed like a number of times, many times. And
there's so many things that I wish I could just go back and
we learn from those things.
Yeah, that's how it gets better and better every year.
And yeah, and I think it's starting with like really looking at your relationship with kids. What is your relationship with kids and how do you view them? I mean, it's just like it gets incorporated into your own life, it gets integrated into who you are, and then you bring your passions and your interests to the kids. Like, I love to dance. We work with a dancer. I don't care if you don't like to dance. We're going to explore movement in our humanities class. So, and I think you get to share your passions with kids too.
Yeah, you can share your own passions and then also learn about theirs. So.